Underrated, overrated, Bryce Huff, trade rumors. We got to get into all of it right here with a special guest. Let's go. Zoinks! It is unequivocally the Super Bowl for New York Jet fans. Field Yates, baby. Field gosh darn Yates. Let's bring him on the show. Come on, people. Connor Rogers is joining the show. What's up, Connor? But Trevor gosh darn Sycamore, baby. For me, personally, my favorite New York Jet of all time.
Wow, it's great to be on. What an intro that was right there.
Paul, nobody does an intro like you, man.
Paul, you give the best intro of literally any podcast that I've ever been.
I'm gonna lose my gosh darn bananas. Oh, it's time, baby. Hey, everybody. I'm Paul Eston Jr., a.k.a. Boy Green. I'm the New York Jets digital reporter for Heavy.com. Welcome to more show, and we got a spectacular guest. It's been a hot second since we've had him on the program. He's a fellow Jets content creator and also the host of Just Jets. And let's just bring this man in. It's Matt friggin' O'Leary, baby. What is up, Matt?
I'm doing good, man. Thank you so much for having me. I always get amped up for your intros, dude. They always live up to the hype.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm fired up, and let's go. We're going to mix a couple of different things. First off, on your channel, you had a top 5 overrated, top 5 underrated. There's some interesting factoids, and I want to highlight this show, kick right off the top, with one of the guys that cracked your elite top 5 underrated list, and that was Bryce freaking Huff. And then we find out earlier today, you already have a video out on your channel about it. Zach Rosenblatt has his 90 Thoughts article where he kind of gives a little bit of a blurb on every player. And for Bryce Huff, he said, hey, just so you guys know, the Jets have taken multiple trade calls. Now, obviously, it hasn't resulted in anything yet, but just that he mentioned that and that the Jets haven't really been utilizing Bryce Huff, it just kind of scares me, quite frankly, Matt, as a Jets guy, that the Jets could realistically, considering all those factoids, actually hit the eject button. And I feel like it would be a major mistake, Matt.
Yeah, I'm with you. I wouldn't trade Bryce Huff. I think he's too valuable to this team. And I know that might sound crazy because he only played 20% of the snaps last year, which is way too low. He needs to play more going into 2023. And he's so effective as a pass rusher. You know, he doesn't get a ton of reps, but whenever he is put out there, he is getting after the quarterback and more often than not getting home. So I think you need to find a way to keep him on this roster. I know edge rusher is a deep unit for this team, but just as a pure pass rusher, I think he's the best one that they have. So I'm not moving on from him.
So did he piss in someone's Cheerios? I mean, like, what's happening here? Okay, he was inactive. He was benched. Let's call it what it is. He was benched for the first 3 games of the season. And Robert Saleh, I went back because I'm like, I don't remember exactly what Robert Saleh said. One of the excuses, well, we have a lot of defensive linemen. What? Is that even a reason? Hey, Paul, why do you do those intros? The sky's blue. Okay, that's true, but what does that have to do with the question? I mean, why does he not play more? It feels like fans are screaming for it, but for some reason the team isn't doing it. But the analytics seem to suggest that he is this elite sub-package player that if used more could have even better stats than he has.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And, you know, I'm not going to advocate for him playing something like 70% or more. Right. Of the snaps. I think that's crazy, but he's a very good rotational edge rusher who should be in there in obvious passing situations, 3rd and long, 2nd and long. If you want to say, hey, he's not great against the run, I'd probably agree with you and say, yeah, don't have him in on 1st down. And you could absolutely rotate him in after, but the 20% just seems way too low. To me, there's no reason he can't be closer to 40. And just, you know, just what we see from him on a consistent basis. It's been 2 years of this now. I think he needs to find his way onto the field.
All right, Matt, we went from agreeing and saying how handsome we look to now we're going to be disagreeing a little bit. I took a gander, you know, which is, by the way, a great video on the Matt O'Leary gosh darn channel talking about some of the overrated Jets. I see a couple on this list, Matt. I have to have some questions. And let's start with Max Mitchell. My question is, how can he be overrated? Who is rating? Who is saying like, whoa, watch out for Max Mitchell? I guess that's my first question. He's this 4th rounder. I thought, man, what a steal for the Jets. They finally hit, the broadside of a barn with the 4th rounder. Nice. And he stepped in and was okay. Like, where's the overrated part? Maybe I'm just not understanding there must be some preconceived hype to lead to a potential level of overration, if that's even a word.
Yeah, I think him being in consideration for some as the starting right tackle, in theory, then overrates him. I don't view him as someone who is a starter level at this point in his career. I thought he exceeded my expectation, but the bar was pretty low. I wasn't really expecting him to have to come in and
Sure.
play as a rookie. And the pressure numbers were pretty rough in a small sample size. And if you paced it out over a 17-game season, it was like he was on pace to allow like 40 pressures and 9 sacks, which to me, that's not a starting caliber tackle. That's not to say that he isn't, a fine depth option. I think, you could absolutely make a case for him being a swing tackle on this team. But I think if people who are, kind of sick and tired of Mekhi Becton and say, oh, we'll just put Max Mitchell at right tackle, he was fine last year. I don't know if I'm at that same point.
All right, fair enough. Let me go to another player on the list. And there's a similar theme of like where it is, but I think you explained it well in the video. So that's where I want to get to. Mecole Hardman. He's a guy that some people have said, that he could be the starting slot receiver on this team in a 3 wide receiver set. You don't seem so much. You included him in your top 5 overrated Jets. Interesting, but like where do you see him then? If the people that are saying, hey, slot receiver, starting slot receiver, Matt O'Leary says, hold your gosh darn phone, where do you have him in the pecking order then?
I view him more as like Braxton Berrios' replacement, and I didn't view Braxton Berrios as a starting slot receiver either. I think he's fine as a 4th or 5th receiver, but I think Garrett Wilson's going to play a lot in the slot. He did last year. And obviously they had Elijah Moore in the slot last year too. They mixed him back in more down the stretch, but I think we're going to see a lot of Garrett in the slot with Allen Lazard and Corey Davis on the outside. So I think if people are expecting him to come and, be that starting slot receiver and play, more often than not in that 11 personnel, I don't think that's going to be the case. I think he's going to be more of that gadget guy and not that, prototypical, he's lining up in the slot every single time the Jets are in 3 wide. I think people are assuming he's going to play more than what he is, at least just from my perspective.
Yeah, let me ask you about that because it's interesting. Because when Mecole Hardman was first brought in, I think a lot of people assumed, like, oh, Gizmo Gadget guy, kind of cool, a speedster that could kind of be used around. Adam Schefter suggested something similar. Mecole Hardman gave him the old slapski on Twitter. And then that was kind of interesting. Then later, Rich Cimini had, one of his Sunday morning columns said something that, hey, he's not going to just be this gadget guy. Basically, the Jets promised him that he's going to be playing all over the place and expanding the route tree. So where is the truth in this, do you think, with all these people kind of questioning it?
Yeah, I would guess somewhere in the middle, right? Like, I feel like that's more often than not where this ends up is probably somewhere in the middle. I get if they are going to utilize him more, as Rich Cimini is suggesting, then it is going to be a massive change from what we've seen from him so far in Kansas City. He was a nice role player there and was kind of, depth and special teams guy. But he would be doing something that he really hasn't done yet at this level. And that's not to say that he can't do it, but it's not something that he's proven that he could do yet at this point in his football career.
Again, we're speaking with Matt freaking O'Leary, people. You can make sure you hit him up on the YouTube channel. He's spectacular. You can check it out in the YouTube description. A link straight to his channel that you guys should subscribe to. And Matt, I think it may not have been since the last time we talked, but there's a chance that it was. You are now, from what I understand, from what your people told me, read the notes, a full-time content creator. Is that correct, Matt O'Leary?
Yeah, that's true. I'm, doing this full time now, which has been a really exciting venture. I love getting to go on and talk about the Jets a couple times a day in a video and on social media, and it's been a ton of fun and very rewarding so far.
So what does that entail? Like, I see the pictures on social media. So you provide for people who don't know, and obviously they can hit you up on that handle that's right underneath your name. But like, it's not just Jets. That every once in a while I'll see a drink in your hand. I see you kind of gallivanting in the streets with probably the Aaron Rodgers of the world, kind of going around. So what's kind of your life now as a full-time content creator? What was it before? Like some 9-to-5 job, I assume, and then now being a full-time content creator. What does that entail from a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so I did a bunch of different things in both the media and just broadcasting world. I taught broadcasting for a few years at a college,
Wow.
and then for a year from 2021 to this past October in 2022. I was a sports writer for a website called Odds Checker. I covered, sports gambling and betting for a ton of different, sports and leagues. So I did that for a year. And then eventually decided that it was time to go out on my own. So I do my Jets videos. I own there's content as well. So if we have any hockey fans in the building, I do a podcast and a Patreon there. And yeah, just, keeping options open and, continue to do my thing on my own platform and build it.
And let me just ask you another one, just because I'm interrogating you here. I'm putting you up against a wall trying to get all the answers. So how does it work? Because I think the common people, that watch us do these as like these mini celebrities talking Jets so we can all kind of, talk Jets every day. Like, are you able to live your life exactly how you lived it before? Did you have to change it somewhat? Because financially speaking, most people don't go into our world, Matt, because the money isn't screaming at you in your face. You have to work really hard to even carve out, obviously, what you're doing right now with content creation. But being in the sports media world, it's very difficult to make any money, let alone enough to survive. Have you been able to maintain the same lifestyle, or have there been some adjustments for you?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. It's just more, I think, from the the business side of thing, it's working with brands and sponsorships and stuff like that. That's where the real money is. And I'm working with an agency now that helps place sponsorships, which is very, very helpful, and it allows the creator to just kind of do their own thing. But yeah, I mean, it's fun. I love what I do every single day. There's a lot of hours and behind the scenes stuff that I don't think people realize, and I'm sure that you could speak to this as well as someone who does it. It's not as easy as you just turn on the camera and go for 10 minutes and you're done. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that goes into it: editing, podcasting, promoting on social media. It's it's not your typical 9 to 5, but if it's something you really love and it's something you're passionate about, then it makes it that much easier to put the effort in.
Speaking of passion, I want to get into this. I'm really not sure your take, although I've seen you obviously in a bunch of places, whether it's a Jets Talk panel, your own channel, talking about it. A big point of contention, honestly, bigger than I even thought until I spewed it out into the social media world and immediately get jumped and mugged in the social media streets, is Hard Knocks, Matt. Where are you at on this? In my personal opinion, before I taint your judgment potentially, is I like Hard Knocks and One Jets Drive. I want both. I want as much coverage for what I believe is going to be this special season. Give me all the content. I'm also shamelessly a content creator, and more Hard Knocks means more content for me, which is fantastic. But there's been a lot of Jet fans in the streets that have said, I'm with Salah. I'm with random player like Justin Hardy. Screw Hard Knocks. It's a distraction. I don't want it. And it was surprising a reaction to me from a lot of the fans I'm seeing on social media. Where do you stand in the debate, Matt?
I'm not going to really get bent out of shape one way or the other if they do it or not. I would kind of just, I think I would rather them just continue to do the One Jets Drive, because I think those are so well done and so well produced, and they're already comfortable with those people in the building. I think adding an extra element, if the team and the coach's view is, we don't want it, then all right, that's fine with me. It's not like I need the Hard Knocks, but it also, at the same time, if they're on it, sure, I'm going to watch it. I'm going to be excited to, see it each week, but it's not something where I feel like the Jets absolutely have to do it, or there's no way they can't do it, because at the same time, like, the most successful season that most of us have ever seen from this team has been when the Jets were on Hard Knocks in 2010. So you can't really say that it's a full-on distraction and that it, causes harm. But if the team doesn't want it, then I'm not going to, stand here and say, oh my God, you have to be on Hard Knocks. I hope, the NFL forces them to be on the show. It doesn't really matter to me one way or the other.
I will say, I think this is true. I probably should have double fact checked it. I think I saw it earlier this week. I was just curious. I think it was in The Athletic. It showed the teams that were on Hard Knocks and then like what happened in their respective seasons. And I just going through playoffs, missed the playoffs, this record. And then the Jets, obviously, the last time they were in, went to the AFC Championship game. I'm fairly certain the Jets are the most successful team in Hard Knocks history of being on Hard Knocks and then whatever they ended up doing. I'm fairly certain the Jets went the furthest than anyone. So obviously on the distraction point is something, to be said from that realm. But I ask you, the people that believe it's a distraction, do you agree with them or disagree?
I guess like a part of me sees it, right? Like these new people that are coming in and just adding an extra element, but I don't think it's enough to the point where it's going to really derail a season. I think we've seen teams have it and have success. You mentioned the Jets, the Cowboys were on it a couple of years ago, and they made the playoffs. There's just, it adds an extra wrinkle and an extra element to it. I'm not necessarily looking at it as this massive hindrance, though, if the Jets are on the show.
Yeah, I'm not either. Again, I don't have to spew all my, forcibly you're strapped down to a chair listening to all my Hard Knocks yelling at the porch, "Oh, get off my lawn, kids!" Like, I don't have to be doing that, but I just push back at the people that say distraction. When Aaron Rodgers comes in, the cameras and everything, there's going to be heat. So, like, if that's the thing that's all of a sudden, well, that's cross the line, that's where the Jets fold, then maybe the Jets were always going to fold if that's indeed the case. But neither here nor there, but every content creator I'm going to speak to this offseason, I'm going to asking until obviously it comes out, which should be coming out sooner rather than later, one way or the other, whether or not the Jets are going to get it. Let's go to the most polarizing topic. Let's put you up against it, Matt. I need a prediction. Offensive line, Russian roulette, offensive line, musical chair. You tell me right now, week 1, let's just end the speculation. Week 1, Monday Night Football, Buffalo Bills, they start rolling out the starting lineup. What is the starting lineup for the New York Jets? If you had to predict it right now here in June.
Yeah, I think Brown ends up winning the left tackle job. I think just based on his experience and the fact that he hasn't played right tackle in the NFL is going to come into factor here. Tomlinson at left guard. I do think the rookie Joe Tippmann gets the starting center job out of the gate. AVT moves back inside at guard where I think he's better suited. Yes, he can play tackle and did a nice job filling in last year, but I think his highest potential is at right guard. And I do think Mekhi plays right tackle if he's healthy, which, he looks like he's in the best shape of his life. And I think it's, a good opportunity for him to get back on the field. I know he wants to play left tackle, but, unfortunately, I don't see Dwayne Brown not being this team's starting left tackle. So I think Mekhi does play and does start at right tackle.
All right, a couple of questions about your offensive line group. Number one, on the Mekhi Becton thing, do you think there's any rub? If the Jets just say, hey, it's right tackle or sit on the bench, pal, is it even a conversation? Or Mekhi is clearly like, all right, this is the hand I've been dealt here. I'm just going to be the most badass right tackle I could be? Or do you anticipate any potential issues, media beef, or anything when that ultimately gets revealed at training camp, as it was last year in the same sense?
Yeah, I don't think so. He doesn't really, because like you said, he doesn't really have a choice. If it's, start at right tackle or be the backup left tackle, I think he takes the starting job every day. It's a contract year for him too. So it's important for him to get on the field either at, right tackle or left tackle. Again, being a backup doesn't really do him any good this year as he's due a contract. But if he plays well at right tackle, maybe someone signs him and pays him pretty good money to either continue to play that position or they see something in him and want to switch him back to his natural spot. So I don't think he's going to give much pushback there. If push comes to shove, I think he would play the position.
But continuing on here, Matt, to your point, again, it is this contract year for Mekhi Becton, so obviously he is as motivated as can be. But my first question was predicting the offensive line. So again, not your opinion, just what you believe is ultimately going to happen. Do you have any questions with the offensive line group as constructed? Like, again, your predictions of who's going to start. Do you think anything is a mistake, or is that how you would also have it if you were making those decisions as a coach?
No, I think that's how I would do it as well. I think you need to have the best 5 out there. There are some question marks with that offensive line group, which is a little bit frightening. I think they have, a very high potential, but there's also legitimate questions. For instance, Brown's coming off a surgery and he's up there in age at left tackle. Mekhi, we haven't seen him in a couple of years. That's both your tackles. Lincoln Tomlinson had a really down year, and you're probably starting a rookie in Joe Tippmann. So that's, 4 out of 5 spots. I think AVT, no matter where you put him, you feel pretty good. But after that, there's some legit questions, but, I think they're betting on the ceilings of these guys, which is pretty good.
What's the ceiling for you for this Jets offensive line? Top 5, top 10, top 15? Like if those are the 5 and they all play, what's the best you could possibly imagine for that group?
I think ceiling is top 10. I think that's where I'm comfortable saying that they could be. Which is great. I think if you have a top 10 offensive line, you're in a really good spot, especially with the assumed improved quarterback play of Aaron Rodgers. I think right now I have them at middle of the pack, maybe slightly below average because of some of those questions, like I mentioned, and injuries unfortunately could play a factor and knock them off again. But I think they should be, middle of the pack. The top 10 offensive line would be my guess.
Is Will McDonald the most overlooked New York Jets first round pick of all time?
It feels that way. It really
Yeah.
does. It doesn't feel like he's getting a ton of hype. I saw you tweeted that out either yesterday or recently. You had a tweet with Will McDonald, but yeah, I think it's just because of the position that he plays, and they already have a bunch of guys there. But yeah, he definitely isn't getting the hype that other Jets first rounders have had in recent years.
Is he inevitably due for the Jermaine Johnson treatment? What I mean by that is Jermaine ended up having 2.5 sacks. Not the same questions as Bryce Huff in terms of playing time and things of that nature, but kind of close. I mean, he wasn't played as a normal first round pick of the NFL would be played. Is that also perhaps why maybe the hype is kind of down? That's what people are just anticipating the same thing happening last year that happened with Jermaine, and if so, is that fair?
Yeah, I do think that's what's happening, and I think that's probably fair when you look at how the Jets roster is constructed, especially on the defensive line and edge group. Now, I think to Will McDonald's benefit, he is better as a pure pass rusher than Jermaine Johnson is, so that might get him on the field a little bit more in, obvious passing downs, which could boost some of his sack numbers. Where with Jermaine, that's not his skill set. He's more of he's very good against the run, and he gets sacks, but it's a lot of times it's due to his high motor. It's not like, speed or just nasty twitch off the edge, which is fine. Having guys like that is also valuable. But I think with the pure skill set that McDonald has, he might have similar snap counts or playing time to what we saw from Jermaine last year, but just with and maybe an extra sack or two because of his skill. But yeah, I wouldn't anticipate him, being an every down player in year one.
Couple of questions before we get you out of here. Matt O'Leary again talking here, heavy on Jets on the Facebook page, the YouTube channel, the Twitter account. We're all over the place, baby, talking all things New York Jets. Some people may forget, but Sauce Gardner had a lot of questions coming out of the draft. The transition from Cincinnati to the pros, the level of competition. There was a lot of those going on, and now he's had all this hype, Sports Illustrated cover, and all these the first team All Pro, and all this love and hype. How do you think Sauce response to this? Does he continue the same first team all pro play? And some people have called him the best quarterback in football already. Or is he due for some level of inevitable regression in your mind?
I think he's just going to continue to get better. Sauce is just, he
Yeah.
has that blossoming star just about him. I don't know how he carries himself, how he prepares, how he was able to come into the league and dominate right away was truly, truly remarkable. And I only think he, shines the brighter the lights are. Same thing with, I know you didn't ask about him, but Garrett Wilson, 2 first rounders from last year. Well, they had 3, but those 2 in particular, they just seem like they play their best football when the lights are the brightest. And I think, he's only getting better in year 2.
Well, I'm glad. A beautiful segue. It's almost like you do this for a living, Matt O'Leary, going right to Garrett Wilson. But that's my question and it's interesting because last summer, I don't know if you remember this in the same light, but I remember Garrett Wilson being talked about now the same way that Elijah Moore was talked about last summer. I remember reading the best player of OTAs, the best player of this, and he's looking all over the place. And then obviously we saw what happened during the season. So I'm seeing the same level of hype for Garrett. Obviously I feel differently because of Aaron Rodgers throwing him the football than the unknown of Zach Wilson. But is it possible for Garrett Wilson to live up to this hype? Fantasy football people are going, yeah, clear first round wide receiver and all these other things. Like there's a lot of hype around Garrett Wilson. Is he going to live up to all that hype in your mind?
Yeah, I really think he does. Had over 1,100 yards last year with 4 different quarterbacks throwing him the football. I think with getting Aaron Rodgers in here, that's only going to elevate his game. And Rodgers had so many positive things about him to say and compared him to Devontae Adams, which is just crazy to think that the Jets have a wide receiver of that caliber. That's amazing. But I think with this kind of quarterback play, he could be a 1,300 plus yard receiver and push close to double-digit touchdowns. That's how high on him that I am. I think he's a bona fide number 1 receiver, and he's going to prove it this year.
Are you on the Dalvin Cook to Jets train toot toot?
Not particularly. I'm not like if they signed him, I'm not going to say it's the worst thing in the world. I get it why they added him, but for me, I would rather them spend some of their leftover money and try to bring back a Quan Alexander and maybe add an extra body to the safety room after assuming losing Chuck Clark for the season. I'm comfortable enough with the running back room behind Breece Hall. I think Michael Carter bounces back. I really like Izzy Abanikanda, who they drafted this year. I think he's a really explosive back and would like to see more of him. And I thought Bam Knight was good last year as well. I think really the struggle down the stretch to me, I put more on the offensive line injuries than the running backs just not being good enough. Um,
Hmm.
I I'm not against adding talent, and if they did it, I'm not going to sit here and say that it was the worst move ever. I can't believe they did that, but I don't really think it's a necessity that they have to.
And last one before we get you out of here, and it's just kind of worked out this way in all of these interviews I've been doing recently. Oh yeah, Aaron Rodgers. So let's throw in an Aaron Rodgers question. Minimum 50 touchdown passes. Those that's the some of the prediction words on the streets. Matt, are you in that camp? And if you are or aren't, give us your predictions, your statistical predictions for Aaron Rodgers' first year with the Jets in 2023.
Yeah, that would be nuts. I would love for him to throw 50, but, I think he's probably closer to 35. I don't think the Jets are going to be a team that just airs it out and throws it all over the yard. I think, they will run the football with Breece Hall and the other stable of backs that they have. And even Aaron Rodgers in his MVP seasons, it wasn't like with Hackett, it wasn't like they were throwing it all over the yard. They did have a nice run game, a 1-2 punch in Green Bay. And I think they'll lean on that a little bit. They like to, Salah's still a run the ball and play defense kind of coach. And I'm not saying that, it's going to be 17 touchdowns and 3,000 yards like Mark Sanchez in 2010, but I don't think it's going to be like 5,050 touchdowns. As much fun as that will be, I don't think the Jets are going to necessarily throw it that much. So I'll say a little over 4,000 yards, around 35 touchdowns, which would be a historic Jets season anyway.
You're damn right it would be. Sign me the hell up right now. Matt, before we get you out of here, it's been a nice variety in the diet, a little about your content creator life, some behind the scenes, some Jet stuff. Let people know if they come to your channel, and also feel free to tell them where that is. What kind of content do you have coming up here over the summer?
Yeah, absolutely. At Matt O'Leary NY on YouTube and all social media. We're talking Jets football every day over there and kind of just reacting to whatever people are talking about on social media, on Twitter, Instagram. We're, sharing our take on it. And I'm just excited for training camp to be rolling around soon and to start talking about some actual football, because it's been a long off season, a new quarterback in here, all exciting stuff, but I'm ready for them to get on the field and talk about actual football.
Yes, and we will be on earlier than ever because, of course, the Jets report a week earlier to training camp. They have the Hall of Fame game, which will be its own festivity within itself, the Super Bowl before the Super Bowl of the season. So it should be a lot of fun. Matt, thanks for taking the time, brother.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
There he is, Matt O'Leary. Make sure you follow him at Matt O'Leary NY on all social media.